Welcome, everyone. The Liberty Power Hour is on. Welcome to Freedom Watch, a 60-minute injection of raw liberty, streaming from the highly acclaimed Strategy Room on FoxNews.com. I'm your host, Judge Andrew Napolitano. We'll discuss the issues that profoundly affect your freedom, your civil liberties, your financial liberties, and your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. The Federal Reserve is a private, unregulated bank into which the Obama administration wants to put all regulatory authority for financial institutions, from the compensation of executives to the investments companies make, to the locations of their franchises, to the amount of fat in McDonald's hamburgers. And they want the Fed to have this power without appeal and without having to state the reasons for the regulations that the Fed may promulgate. All grouped investments, even if the investors own the group like hedge funds, will be subject to the Fed's new rules. Under these new proposed rules, all state-chartered banks will now be subject to the Fed. All businesses, whether financial in nature or not, that are owned by any financial institutions will be subject to the Fed. Even mom and pop shops and stores that, if in the Fed's opinion, should they fail, could produce systemic harm to the economy, will be subject to the Federal Reserve. The Fed and the Fed alone shall have the authority to require your lawyer and your accountant to report data to the Fed that even the IRS can't get. There appears to be no limit to the private human behavior that the Fed cannot find a way to regulate under this proposal of the Obama administration. But who will regulate the Fed? What will become of the clauses in the Constitution that were written to prohibit just this very type of regulation? Whatever became to the word free in free market? You know who's coming. It's my great pleasure to introduce one of the great defenders of freedom and liberty in America today. Congressman Ron Paul joins us from our nation's capital. Congressman Paul, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Thank you, Judge. Good to be with you.
What is the status of your bill, which now has a huge number, well more than half, I think, of co-sponsors in the House to regulate the Fed? What is its status in the Senate?
Well, in the House, we have 250 co-sponsors and 80 Democrats, so we're doing very well. Of course, in the Senate, we don't have as many members, just a few, but Jim DeMint is doing a tremendous job over there and tried to attach it last week. Now, that was denied on a technicality, but that is just a facade, because the technicalities are always ignored for things that they want. This means they don't want it, and this is their organized effort now to stop us. But we're not going to be stopped. It's just going to energize everybody at the grassroots, because the grassroots are for this. That's why we have 250 co-sponsors. And as you just described in your opening statement, this whole idea that the Fed created the problem that we have, created a bubble, and then we're going to give the Fed more power? It makes no sense. The only place anybody can figure out how this could happen, it would be in Washington, D.C. You know, somebody creates a problem, so we get them promoted.
What are the powers that be afraid of that might be revealed if and when the Fed is audited?
I think the biggest thing is the cronyism. You know, who got the benefits, who really got some of these Federal Reserve funds as well as TARP funds. And I don't think they want people to know about it. And also for me, internationally, I'd like to know what they're doing internationally, what kind of agreements they have with international banks, with other governments, and also what they do in the gold market, how they manipulate the value of the dollar by manipulating gold prices. So there is just so much that we can learn. But the truth is when people ask me exactly what are you going to find, the whole point is we don't know exactly what we're going to find, but we know one thing, they're going to dig their heels in. They're going to do everything in the world to prevent this bill from passing.
I hope that you find that the public recognizes that since the Fed began its secretive and monopolistic ways of regulating our monetary policy and our money supply in 1913, that the dollar has lost about 95% of its buying power. Wouldn't it be wonderful if people discovered that, found it out, we all know it already, and decided to get rid of the Fed?
Well, I think this is the first major step. Of course, we have more co-sponsors on this bill, not because we've taken a position exactly what we should replace it with, but everybody agrees we need to know what they're doing. Whether you believe in a monetarist approach, a Keynesian approach, or a hard money approach, the American people now want us to find out what's going on. They want transparency, and that to me is a good time for us to find out what is happening. But like you say, when we discover what's really been going on, I think the American people are going to demand the next step. They're going to demand honest money. It's happened many times over history. Usually when you have the the vote by the general public on honest money, sound money, hard money versus paper, the people always vote for sound money because it makes so much sense.
Your dogged, indefatigable, tireless effort to expose this monster is so revealing and so rewarding of your own personal understanding of how our economic society works. It's amazing to me the number of people from all across the political spectrum of every type of political ideology imaginable in the House of Representatives that is now in favor of this. What frustrates me is that the structure of the House of Representatives, starting with Mrs. Pelosi and going to Congressman Frank, gives such extraordinary power to individual human beings who have positions of hierarchy in the House that they can frustrate what has now become the overwhelming majority will of members of the House.
Yeah, I think this is great, but I give credit to the grassroots. And I think we get the kind of government that we deserve, and I think that if the grassroots America wake up, they can change government. I mean, the system still works to that degree. It's getting on shaking grounds, but it will work if the American people really wake up and demand changes. Most of the members of Congress are decent people, and they like their job. So if they like their job and the American people say, look, you can't have that job unless you do our bidding, and that means we need to get this thing under control, that to me is a healthy sign.
This morning, the House of Representatives Committee on Oversight and Government Reform issued about a 110-page report, which basically told us what we already knew. Peter Schiff, who will be on in just a few moments, predicted before September of '08 that the housing crisis would cause this recession. Tom Woods has cataloged this, outlined it, will also be on in a few minutes, brilliantly in his book Meltdown. But it's astonishing to me that some aspect of the Congress has finally acknowledged that the government was behind the housing crisis, that the Community Reinvestment Act of '77 forced banks to loan monies in neighborhoods and at amounts where the banks would not do it if they were permitted to be motivated by just the free market, that Fannie and Freddie were willing to take all the bad mortgages and all the bad loans that the government encouraged the banks to make, that the Bush administration ordered the Department of Housing and Urban Development to make available 150,000 mortgages with zero money down, which, as you know, Congressman, in some states isn't even considered a purchase, it's considered a lease. I'm sort of stunned that anybody in the government now admits this, but I'm not expecting them to change their ways. Are you?
No, I think the leadership still likes those programs. The basic flaw is the easy money, the easy credit, and lower than market interest rates. That causes the difficulties. But then when you add on to the CRA and these other government programs dictating the terms, they literally encourage at the threat of punishment if you do not make these bad loans. So that's like pouring gasoline on a fire. It made the bubble grow that much bigger, and finally, it burst. So yes, and what are we doing now? We're trying to bail that system out, reignite that whole process, and I just see that it'll be totally impossible for them to achieve any recovery in what they're doing here.
We're chatting with Congressman Ron Paul, Republican of Texas. Congressman Paul, the president in Russia 2 days ago, and your colleague from the other side of the aisle, Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island last night, a Democrat, both suggested that the government might need, that the administration